Hey there, welcome to the Desire Factor podcast. I am so excited because I am interviewing Kute Blackson. He is the author of the national best-selling book, You Are the One, which I interviewed on my podcast, Quantum Success, and is widely considered the next generation's leader in the field of personal development by everyone, ranging from Larry King, Jack Canfield, Marianne Williamson, and so many more. He's been featured on Larry King Now, Fox and Friends, Dr. Drew, Inc. magazine calls him the mindfulness guru billionaires go to for advice. Wow. So for over 20 years, Kute has been inspiring audiences around the world. From the first time he spoke in front of 3,000 people at the age of 8, and to speaking in over 300 different venues by the time he was 18, to helping organizations develop authentic leadership and achieve extraordinary performances over the last decade. He is a friend that I was in TLC with, and I am very, very grateful to have him on the Desire Factor podcast. Enjoy this conversation where we talk about the magic of surrender. So Kute, I am so excited to have this conversation with you. I've always enjoyed our conversations through TLC and some of the fun times that we've had together. So I want to hear about the magic of surrender. What made you even write a book about surrender?
Yeah, this was not the book I thought I was going to write. I had all sorts of other preconceived ideas and intentions. I had my own intentions of this is what I want to write. This is what would sell. This is what would be a bestseller. This is what the market wants. This is what people want. And so I had all of these ideas. And I remember I wrote all of these ideas on a whiteboard, like a big wall. And there were like hundreds of ideas, thoughts. The wall was covered. And you know that feeling where you're trying to make something fit a box, but it's not quite fitting and the shoe doesn't quite fit. And I was forcing, and that could work, and that would be great. And people will love that. That's a great title. And nothing was resonating in my soul. Nothing was truly, it made sense, but it didn't feel right. And one day I just kind of gave up and I looked at the wall, and the only word that resonated, the only word that really stuck out, the only word that really felt true, that I could look you in the eyes and say, this feels authentic and in my own soul's integrity, was the word surrender. And my ego was like, well, I don't know if I want to write about surrender. People know, we all resist surrender.
It's gonna Who wants to do that?
It's going to freak people out. It's like going to the dentist, but it felt true. And so I had to go through a process of just surrendering to that. This was the book that was seeking to be written, and it had a soul of its own. And when I really understood that, I got myself out of the way, and I felt like I became a servant to the book. And so the book, I think, was inspired really by my whole life. In that moment, I started seeing glimpses from my whole life, and I began to see that my entire life and my childhood with my father and my mother, which we can get into, was really so much of a preparation to write this particular book. I felt like I was the person to write this book. And so in 2016, my first book, You Are the One, was out. I was traveling the world, speaking, promoting it. It was a bestseller. The end of the year, I'm on a high. Life has a way of doing this to you. I'm on a high. I was just on Larry King. I was very excited. And I get a phone call from my father. And my father says, we need to talk to you. Your mother has cancer. Now, I am like, my mother was my everything. I mean, she's the one that raised me. I'm the only child. I mean, she showed me unconditional love in a way that it was so profound and incredible that when I heard that, my heart completely sank. And I called her up and she downplayed it. And so I began to fly back and forth from Los Angeles to London every month, literally every month for a week, to take care of her, to be with her in chemo sessions, to, support her with what she needed. And it was very interesting because I went into that process with my intention. I'm going to heal her. I'm going to, give her alternative therapies and green juice and powders and supplements. And I'm going to heal her, the mind-body connection, all this stuff. And after about, I would say 2, 3, 4 months, I realized that she wasn't going to make it. And I realized that, unless there was a miracle, she was going to die. And so I had to begin surrendering to what was and surrendering to what seemed to be happening. And I was open to a miracle. And so that surrender began to opened me up to stop resisting and be even more fully present with her, because in that moment, it made me realize that because I was no longer resisting, every moment could be the last moment. Every text could be the last text. Every conversation literally could be the last conversation. There was no more projection of the future. There was only now. And so what started out to be the worst year of my life turned out to be the best year of my life, because here I was with my mother sitting in chemo, just talking and holding her hand and looking at her eyes. I'd never seen the color of my mother's eyes, watching her make, my mother's Japanese, make homemade sushi and take her time, which I would get frustrated because she would take too much time making tea and washing dishes. And I thought, this could be the last time I see my mother wash dishes, and it became so precious and sacred that it opened up so much. And I remember looking at my mother and saying, like, I thank cancer for this moment, like my regret was, shit, why did I wait till she was dying, to like have this moment? I was so busy running around trying to write books and inspire people that I missed these precious ordinary moments of just sitting here with my mother. And so after about 6 months, 7 months into the process, she was supposed to get surgery. And this is where the surrender piece really, I think the seed of the book was planted. The doctor said to my mother, they said to us in the hospital, the day I'll never forget, they said, there's nothing else we can do for you. Like, basically, in a loving way, you're going to die, and get your affairs in order. We don't know how long. It could be days, it could be weeks. If you're lucky, months, but definitely not years. So do what you need to do. And, I have tears, I'm holding back the tears. We went outside. Before we got into the car, I looked my mother in the eyes and I asked her a question. I said, are you afraid? Because it's one thing to be positive when everything's great, but in the moment of your mortality, she said, no. She looks me in the eyes and she says, no, I'm not afraid. And I said, why? She goes, because I know I'm not just this body, that what I am is a soul that is beyond birth and death, that this body will go, but I will live forever. I will be, what I am is eternal, and I will be guiding you from the other side. And I'm like, wow. The conviction in her eyes. And then I said to her, is there anything that I can do for you in your final days to make your life easier? Like, what do you need? What can I do? I wanted to be a good son. And she looks me in the eyes and she says, there's nothing I need and there's nothing I want. So what can I do? She goes, all I want for my life at this point is what God wants for my life. And it was a pivotal moment, because I felt the deep, profound alignment. In that moment, what I realized was this woman, who was my mother, was in complete surrender. She wasn't attached to living. She wasn't not open to living, but she was just open to her highest good, whatever that was, doing her best to be healthy, but she was open to her highest good. And I realized she was in total surrender. And this entire year, she never once complained, never once cried, never once felt like a victim. She was just herself, and I thought that was the key for her. And so that really got me thinking. And so as I'm looking at this whiteboard, having this experience, trying to write a book about something else, surrender pops out. And I thought of my mother. I thought of my father, who lived surrender. I looked at the great ones: Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Muhammad Ali, Bruce Lee, Martin Luther King, Elon Musk, even Oprah. At some level, all of these folks, they got to the point where they had to surrender themselves to a vision that was bigger than themselves, to their deeper intuition, to their soul's guidance. They had to surrender themselves. And so I just want to kind of set a framework for the conversation in terms of surrender, because I think in our culture today, and this was one of my resistances in writing the book, in our culture today, there's this myth that surrender is weak, that if you surrender, you're weak, you're going to be taken advantage of, you're going to be left behind, you're going to be a doormat, you're not going to manifest your goals, dreams, and desires, and you're going to get less. And I'm actually kind of wanting to provide an invitation to people of a new paradigm to say, wait a second, surrender is the most powerful thing you can do. Surrender is the most courageous thing you can do. Surrender is the password to freedom that actually activates a greater power of life manifesting through you. And if you surrender, what if you didn't get less, but you actually got more than you could imagine and create, because often the mechanism that we are using to visualize and intend is limited. It's great. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but to a degree, when we get attached to that, it's limited to our own identity, our own perception, our own ego, which is based on our conditioning. So we're not able to see the total possibilities of life from the perspective of the mind. And so I believe that when we surrender, there's a shift. The question, the old paradigm is, what do I want? Nothing wrong with knowing what you want, get clarity. But that clarity is often limited, because sometimes what we think we want is what we think we want, and not really what's truly for our highest. And many times what we think we want is what we think we want based on who we think we are. And our goals sometimes become like a projection of our unmet needs and wants and desires, and so we're never truly satisfied. So the question I'm inviting people to ask in the paradigm of surrender as a beginning is not just what do you want? Yeah, ask what do you want? Feel that, feel what's true, feel what's most authentic to the degree that you can. But ask yourself, what is it that life wants to express through? What is it that the universe wants? What is it that life itself, this intelligence, is seeking to express through me? And how do we then align with that deepest impulse, align with that deepest expression of our souls? Then we can align our thoughts and our visualizations and our feelings and our intentions and our money and our marketing and our actions on an impulse that's aligned. And so to me, surrender is letting go of control, or the perception of control. I think in the last 2 years, we've realized we're not as in control as we thought. We have some level of control, but so surrender is letting go of control. Control is that master addiction. Surrender is to, when we stop trying to force, and I think that's a key word. So it's not that we don't put effort, it's just we stop trying to force something or manipulate something to be that really isn't. And it's the willingness to sort of let go of who we think we should be and how we think life should be, so that we can truly be open to the grace and the authenticity of what life is seeking to sort of manifest through us. And so when we surrender, I just kind of say, we open up, we truly open, we stop putting limits on life, and we truly open ourselves to the infinite possibilities of life. And I think that's when life can use us. That's when life can manifest through us. That's when, Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, these great ones, they surrendered and they transcended their own ego's human capacity to manifest their own life on their own. Then they tapped into another dimension of power and grace and energy and frequency and synchronicity that came through them. And so to me, that's 100% the magic of surrender.
Yeah. So I don't know that you're even aware of this, but I have been channeling since 2008, the Council of Light. And everything for me has pivoted. So it's been a big surrender for me. And the book that I was supposed to be writing, it was about how purses and, shoes and all that stuff have been the thing that, has always kind of driven me, or, been my reward, or the things I had passion in. So it was going to be a pursuit of, the desire factor kind of thing around the thing of purses. Well, they came in and said, okay, nice idea, but here's what we're really writing. It's the desire factor. And we're writing about 7 principles. And the 6th principle is surrender. And that has been life-changing for me, because I've always known, I've always said for 20 years, right, that the divine has a broader view of our life. It has, God has a bigger view of our life than we do. It has a bird's eye view. It sees differently than we see. But when the council started bringing in that is an essential piece of our lives, of our manifestation, of our desires, of every piece. That's why this month that we're talking on is about surrender. It's the 6th principle and the desire factor. So I love that you have an entire book totally focused to help people learn how to do it. What are we surrendering to, right? What is surrender and not being in surrender feel like? Right? Because if we're resisting something, we're not surrendering. Because you beautifully said your mom was not surrendered, or your mom was surrendered to life. She wasn't attached to life, but she also wasn't attached to death.
Yes. Yeah. So surrender isn't just giving up and doing nothing and sitting there. And it's not an abdication of responsibility.
No.
It's not just sitting there and saying, well, I'm going to eat Big Macs and milkshakes and donuts and Krispy Kremes and I'm just going to surrender. No. Surrender means doing your part. Surrender means waking your ass up in the morning and exercising and, eating the healthy shake and doing your yoga and doing your meditation and doing all that's in your power to do and doing your best and trusting the way life unfolds. And so surrender really is when you feel the deepest, most authentic truth in your being, which that guidance, that true deeper impulse, which doesn't always make, as you said, doesn't always make sense to the mind, doesn't always make sense to the logic. And so one of the things I think that we have to be willing to give up a little bit is this constant need to know. The ego and the mind, we have a constant need to know and understand what everything is, what everything means, and the truth is, even when we think we know, we really don't.
Don't know.
It's just an illusion of knowing. We just have that illusion of knowing. And so I think the degree to which we're free in life is the degree to which we embrace the unknown and we dance in the unknown. And we surrender is the willingness to allow, and it's a shift in paradigm and a way of living, which I think that over the last couple of years, the universe is initiating us all as a humanity into a more surrendered flow way of living. And so surrender is that willingness to allow yourself to allow life to lead you, to allow life and this intelligence of life, the divine, the infinite, God, creation, whatever label you want to put, to allow life to guide you. And I think the more we can do that, the more we are in flow. And this intelligence has been around for billions and billions and billions and like eternity. Like it knows this intelligence is breathing you, it's breathing me, it's trillions of functioning trillions of cells and 8 billion people and all of existence, the sun, the star, the moon, all dimensions of life. And so this intelligence knows. And the more I think we're able to get ourselves out of the way, truly get ourselves out of the way and surrender, then that energy starts moving us and living us and guiding us. And we begin to realize that we really aren't the ones doing it. And if you look at Jesus, I think Jesus provided us with a code. To me, he was someone who just realized his true nature, his true Christ consciousness nature. And he, in and of himself, said, the things I do, you can do these things and more. He wasn't like, hey, I'm the great one and no one else can do it. It's like, if I can do it, you can do it, right? And so I think we have to stop projecting and say, he was just a possibility, like Michael Jordan is a possibility, like Muhammad Ali was a possibility in boxing, and he was a possibility in spiritual consciousness. And so, Jesus said, it's not I, like this miracle working being, right? It's not I, individual I, Kute, Christy, John, Jack, Susie, Bob. It's not I that does the work. It's the Father. It's consciousness. It's life within me that does the work. So he knew the deeper truth that I am not the doer. And I think when we start realizing that, then we surrender ourselves to life. That's when we go beyond and we transcend our own limited mental, human experience and capacity. That's the magic. That's the grace.
And that's why I say,
and that's when miracles happen, because we go beyond ourselves. The challenge is, and that's why I say, if you want magic, and we all want magic, you have to surrender. It's an equation. You want magic, you got to surrender. How much magic you want equates how much surrender you need. And the challenge is the ego, our perceived sense of self, is constantly holding on, and it's constantly trying to control every aspect of our life, because the ego's job is to reinforce its existence. And so to surrender and to let go and to trust actually freaks out the egoic sort of tendency, because without controlling and reinforcing my identity and existence, it can feel like a death. And that's why we're constantly controlling, because this egoic sense of our identification feels like, I exist, I'm the doer, I'm the one running things, I'm the one making things happen. And the truth is, all of the great ones knew. That's why I think they had such humility, that they were not the ones doing it. Life was really doing it through them. They showed up. They did their part. Mandela showed up. Martin Luther King showed up. But something else was coming through. And I think that's the magic of surrender. But it's not being passive. It's not doing nothing. It might mean if you feel in your heart there's something you need to do, an action you need to take, a book you need to write, it means the willingness to own that, to feel that, and take responsibility. It might mean you acknowledge something inside like, hey, I hate my job, or hey, there's an injustice in the world and this is my deepest guidance. And it might mean you go out and protest. It might mean you write that book or write that letter. It might mean you stand up to your abuser and hold someone accountable if that's what is truly authentic. And so the surrender is to your soul, the surrender is to your truth, the surrender is to that deeper integrity, and the surrender ultimately is to life.
Amen to that, brother.
Yeah.
It's very, very true. And it's a totally different way of life when we can understand where's the surrender and then what's our responsibility. It's that dance. It's knowing that, hey, I get to intend, right? I get to choose, because like you said, it's important to know what you want. It's much better than just going, I focus on what I don't want, right? We don't want to walk around focus on, I don't want this, I don't want, because most people are. Right.
Yeah,
but it's all, we're talking about a different level of mastery. We're not talking about just the difference between, not shifting our focus from what we don't want to what we do want. It's knowing what you do want, but then surrendering even that idea to
the highest good.
But it does
mean, I think your point is so important. It's a nuance that's so important. So it is to feel what's the deepest truth, to feel what is the most authentic desire. Like when I wrote the book, it's like, well, I want to write about this, I want to write about that, but none of it really felt I could have, and it would have been okay, and it would have been cool, but none of it really felt like, yes, 100%, like I have no choice, this is totally aligned. So surrender is really feeling that deepest truth, feeling your deepest goal, your deepest desire, your deepest authentic intention, and then moving in that direction, giving 100%. It might mean you work harder than you've ever worked. It might mean you work on the weekends. It might mean you work till midnight, but you give 100%. The key is without attachment.
Yes.
Without attachment, because sometimes we get so attached to the goal that we see that we don't realize we're limiting life. And we think that the goal is the goal that's meant to be the goal, but sometimes the goal is not the goal. The goal is the necessary puzzle piece to take us on a journey so that we can learn the lessons and grow and evolve. But because we get so attached to the goal, we're not able to be open to the flow of life taking us in a different direction. And so sometimes we end up, that's how we end up limiting life, because we say, no, it's got to be this. But maybe it wasn't meant to be that, but that doesn't mean you weren't meant to go for that goal. And if we didn't go for that goal, we would not have grown and evolved and learned the soul lessons to be even more prepared and ready for the next level, for the next
exactly level. That's what this podcast is. That's what the desire factor is all about. It's the desire that moves you. It's who you become in the process of that desire, but it's not the end desire, because there's something beyond that. That the divine, who gave you the desire in the first place, knowing who we are and our personalities, would say, ooh, I would love that, right? And I'm doing what I can. I mean, action is the last principle. Once you've surrendered, now you take that action with 100% of everything you've got.
And the action piece, I think you bring another important point, is what I have found is when you take action 100%, like you're saying, and you're clear, there's nothing else you could have done. Like a lot of people say, well, I didn't work out, Kute, and I did everything. I'm like, what's everything? Well, I made 3 phone calls. That's not everything, And so when you don't do everything, it's actually more difficult to surrender, because deep down, you're not at peace because you know you didn't do everything. But when you truly do everything and you take action and give 100%, and you know there's nothing more you could actually give, it's actually easier to surrender, because there's nothing more. Like in a relationship, if you truly give everything in a relationship, you love fully, you give fully, you show up fully, you go to therapy, you do everything, and it doesn't work out, that doesn't mean it's not hard. I mean, it's painful, it's heartbreaking, but I found for myself, when I've done that, there's a level of peace in my ability to let go, because I knew there was nothing else I could do. And so
can't do anything more.
Surrender comes also from giving everything you've got and taking all the action, and then trusting life, and then seeing what shows up and allowing yourself to be guided. I think that's the key, really allowing ourselves to be guided. And when things don't work out, what we tend to do, or when we don't manifest things, what we tend to do is collapse, contract, get mad, beat ourselves up. Sometimes we think, maybe it's wrong, or we're cursed by the universe. And
why not me? Why
not me? We're going to victim.
Competition. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think when things don't work out, sometimes it's grace. Sometimes it's a blessing. Because as you said, from the perspective of the ego, we're not able to see the total possibilities and the whole picture of what's seeking to unfold. It's like from the perspective of the mind, we're able to see just a small piece of the painting and the tapestry, the multi-dimensional tapestry that is our life. And often things don't make sense in a particular moment from the level of the ego. But it's usually afterwards, way afterwards, that we look back and go, oh, I see why that needed to not happen. I see why that needed to not happen, because I needed to learn a deeper lesson. I see why that needed to not happen, because the cosmic chess player, the divine, needed to move some things around to bring other people into place. I give an example, like sometimes we so want what we want and we think that's what it's meant to be. Like, I think you've had this experience, I've had this experience, where you're in a relationship and you're like, I met the one. I couldn't imagine being with anyone else. And, you start having visions of future and kids and the rest of your life. And I'm never going to find love like this. And it breaks up and the person's gone and you're heartbroken and you're devastated and you're, mad at the world and just shattered. And you couldn't imagine that you were going to get over that devastation, but you did. And we do, we're resilient. And years later, we look back and go, damn, thank God that didn't happen. Thank God that didn't happen. And so sometimes things don't always make sense in the moment. So when things don't manifest, I just encourage people to step back, breathe, and just be still for a moment and observe. Once you step back, breathe, and observe, get curious. Get curious. Just get curiosity is such an important quality in surrender, because the mind is always projecting that we think we know what everything means. And often we project onto an experience, this is what this means, this is what this is, this is what this isn't. But the mind is limited. And so then we end up limiting life. So when we're able to step back and just get curious, like, what could this mean? What more amazing thing could be seeking to happen? And we just create the availability within ourselves. To me, that's surrender, the availability within ourselves to receive what life is seeking to unfold, knowing that we've done our best. And so I think that's really key. And so when things don't happen, as you step back, sometimes things don't manifest because the dream or the goal that you have may not be authentically aligned with what's highest for your soul. So when you step back, we have to just kind of reevaluate. Sometimes things don't manifest because it's just not the right season yet. It's not the right timing yet. So we have to be patient, cultivate patience in that time, prepare ourselves and trust divine timing, divine season. When things don't manifest, it might also mean we haven't learned a lesson that we need to learn spiritually on a soul level in the situation. And because we haven't learned the lesson, we're not actually ready to, let's say, graduate to that next level of manifestation or relationship and experience. And so what we tend to do is force things. And, I say, rather than forcing it, learn the lesson, because all lessons repeated until learned. And if you've learned the lesson where you are, the soul lesson where you are with who you're with, then often you unlock the energy, you unlock that's the key that unlocks the next level of manifestation, because you've shifted and your vibration shifted and you've learned, you've become a different energy. And so those are
beautifully said.
Yeah.
Beautifully said, Kute. Love you, brother. You're just amazing. I'm so grateful you're out there as a light worker like myself. And I love that you're talking about the magic of surrender. It is so important. So I encourage everybody to go get Kute's book, The Magic of Surrender. It's just coming out in paperback too. So
the book's coming out in paperback May the 3rd. I'm doing a very special event for all of everyone that purchases the paperback, you get to attend a 3-hour deep dive transformational immersive seminar online with me. It's called Reinvent Live on May the 7th. So get the paperback, send your receipt in, and then attend the seminar. The website is kuteblackson.com/reinvent seminar. kuteblackson.com/reinvent seminar.
And we'll put that in our show notes as well. So thank you, Kute. It was awesome to be with you. And
Thanks
I'm so
for having
grateful
me.
for what you're doing, sweetie. Thanks for
you.
coming on the Desire Factor podcast.